Hey guys, today we're going to talk about cruise control and what I call PAS mode 3.5. And what that means is, since Lectric reprogrammed the controller, there's a wide gap between PAS 3 and PAS 4 when you're in class 3 setting. On a fully charged battery, now in PAS 3, the speed limit is approximately 17 miles per hour. The older controllers, PAS 3, was close to 20 miles per hour, so they dropped it about 3 miles per hour. They kept PAS 4 and 5 at the same settings, but PAS 1, 2, and 3, they dropped about 3 miles per hour. Well, I found this a little bit concerning since I like to ride between about 16 to 21 miles per hour. That's kind of where I like to ride. Residential areas, I'll ride about 16, and when I get out in an open area, thoroughfares and such, I want to get up at least 20 miles per hour or more. And it's also to be noted that your speed is going to drop down considerably when your battery level starts dropping down. For example, for about every 25% decrease in your battery level, your speed limits will drop about 3/4 of a mile per hour. So when you're down at the lower end, let's say between 25 and 50% of your battery level left, your PAS 3 is around 15 miles per hour. So it's dropped a good 2 miles per hour from where it was when the battery was fully charged. Now this greatly affects where I like to ride. So I said, well, I need to devise a way that I can keep my normal riding level between 16 and 21 miles per hour. And the way I do it with the cruise control. And what I mean about that is I still pedal. I use my pedal power the same that I would if I was in any of my PAS modes. So I can continue to pedal. It's just that I will regulate my speed limit with my throttle. And this gives me the option to regulate my speed anywhere from, let's say, 6 miles per hour all the way to about 21 miles per hour, 22 fully charged. So I've got I've got all the range there that I need to find a setting that I want. I'll show you in just a minute what I've done on my throttle over here, but I have made some marks on my throttle so when I turn it, I can estimate about where I want my speed to be. Let me point out too that I use speed control or cruise control and speed loosely because that's not really how the controller controls your motor. It controls your motor by supplying a certain amount of current in each of the PAS modes and in throttle movement. It regulates the current level. It really doesn't regulate the speed. So if you set your speed going down the road, and let's say you set your speed at 16 miles per hour and engage your cruise control, as long as you're level with no wind, you will maintain that 16 miles per hour. But as soon as you go up a hill, your speed will start dropping off. If you go down a hill, your speed will start increasing. And the same thing with wind resistance. If you get a headwind starts coming towards you, that speed will decrease, and if you have a tailwind, your speed will increase. So the speed governing by the controller is, I think, very loosely thought of, because really you're not governing speed as much as you're governing the amount of current going to the motor. Now, don't get confused with speed limits, because the controller does have speed limits. That means in each of the PAS modes, it will shut down after a certain speed. So it does have a speed limit. But when you're riding, pedaling, have resistance on the bike, it really hasn't reached that speed limit necessarily. But as soon as it does, the motor will cut off. That's why in PAS 5, when you reach 28 miles per hour, you can feel the motor will just shut down until you drop back down below 28 miles per hour, and then you can feel it kick back in. So the same thing is true with the throttle. When you have the throttle set at, let's say, wide open throttle, and let's say 21 miles per hour, well, you start going downhill, the motor will disengage once it goes above that speed limit threshold for the throttle. So I hope that puts a little bit of clarity, because it is, I think, a misconception out there by a lot of people on how the controller controls the speed of the bike. So with that being said, I'll bring the camera over here and I'll show you how I have my bike set up for this video. Okay, let me explain to you how I have my bike set up. For this video, I'm capturing everything with this 360 camera. This is an Insta360 1X camera. And by mounting it here, it will cover everything. Covers everything 360 degrees around you. So it's a good camera for wide angle exposure. So I've got a very wide angle here. Got a camera on the front and a camera on the back. So that's what I have used for this video, and I use it for a lot of my videos. Also in this video, I'm concentrating mainly on cruise control. So everybody knows, I think, how to engage the cruise control. I'm going to go through it rather slowly here. I turn around and I get to this side of the bike so you can kind of see what's happening here. This is your throttle. Now if you notice on my throttle, I have 3 marks here and 1 there. Technically I don't need but 1 here and 1 here to do what I like to do. And that's basically the ones I'm going to concentrate on. And that's this top one here, the one that's most forward, and 1 here. So when I turn it, I can tell where it lines up, the rotating dot lining up with the stationary dot. So I can get a feeling over time. You'll know about what speeds that you're setting before your bike even reaches those speeds. So a lot of this will come rather second nature once you practice it a little bit. It may look a little bit complicated. You'll see in the video, I'm going through it. Well, most of this stuff now is intuitive for me. I don't even have to think about it. A little bit of my background, I did back in my 30s and 40s, I did a lot of cross-country cycling. So you know, I'm familiar with shifting gears and constantly shifting depending on the terrain you're in and your speed and all of this. It becomes second nature to me. It may not to everybody. And don't get hung up on this. If you don't feel comfortable doing it quite the way that I'm doing it and shifting as much as I do, there's nothing wrong with that. You've got a electric bike here, and for all practical purposes, this bike doesn't really care from the motor standpoint what gear you're in. It doesn't make any difference to that motor. It doesn't care whether you're in gear 1 or gear 7. If those pedals are moving, that motor is running. If it's in one of your 5 PAS modes. So don't get hung up on what gear should I be in at what speed, da-da-da-da-da. Don't worry about that. Now from a cycling standpoint, I try to keep my cadence around 80 RPM, which I consider is kind of a light spinning. It's not 90 is it's spinning. I'll say 80 RPM is light spinning, 90 is spinning, 100 is fast spinning. So that's for people that like to spin because that gets the cardiovascular moving. And if you don't get anything else out of this, if you can get your heart rate up, you get that cardiovascular exercise. When you get to be older, that means a lot. So that being said, these are your controls over here for your controller. Everybody should be familiar with it by now if they've ridden the bike. So to engage your cruise control, you'll move your throttle over what setting you want it to be, and you will hold it there. Then you will take your down arrow, and you will hold it in anywhere from 1.5 to 3 seconds, and you will see cruise pop up right here on your screen. Once that happens, you can release that, and now you're in cruise control. As soon as you get your cruise control going, it will stay engaged until you apply brakes or you move your throttle. If your cruise control is engaged and you move your throttle, that will disengage it. If your cruise control is engaged and you hit your right brake, that will shut it off. Same thing for your left brake. If you hit it, it will shut off. So there are 3 ways to disengage the cruise control. When you're in cruise control, it is limited, like I say, to a current level. Not necessarily a speed, but a current level. And it will maintain that current level until it's disengaged. Now, if you're in PAS 4 and you start pedaling, it will override the cruise control and your speed will speed up. And the same thing in PAS 5. Now, this will also occur in 1, 2, and 3 if you have your throttle setting low. Let's say you've got your throttle setting at 6 miles per hour and you're cruising along at 6 miles per hour and you're in PAS 1. Well, as soon as you start pedaling, it's going to go to 8 miles per hour, whatever your PAS 1 takes you to, and it overrides it. The same thing with 2. If you did 2, it would jump on up, to about 12 miles per hour or whatever. And then you go to 3, and it would jump up to 17 or whatever miles per hour when you start pedaling. So they will override the cruise control. It will still stay engaged as long as you don't hit the throttle or the brakes. It will still be there. And when you take your pedal, you quit pedaling, no matter what PAS mode you're in. Once that speed drops to the point where the cruise control is set, then the cruise control will start coming back in. Let's say you're in PAS 4 and you're going 20 miles per hour and you've got your cruise control at 16. Well, as long as you're pedaling PAS 4, you're going 21 miles per hour, let's say, and you quit pedaling, the speed will drop back down until it hits that 16 mile per hour limit, and then the motor will kick in and it'll start over. So that's basically how your cruise control works. Now what I use my cruise control for is I use it as a variable PAS mode. When I say variable, I may say PAS 3.5 because where I like to ride is between PAS 3 and PAS 4, which is about 16 miles per hour up to about 21 miles per hour. That's kind of where I like to ride. In neighborhoods, I normally ride maybe 16 miles per hour. When I get out on a thoroughfare, I may boost it up to PAS 4 and run 21, 22 miles per hour. So that's about where I run. But truly, I like to run where I feel comfortable running is about 19 miles per hour, which is about where the old controllers were in PAS 3. So in doing that, I've made a stationary mark over here by my throttle, and then I've got one on the throttle itself. And I will rotate it, and I will use that mark as a gauge as to where I want my speed to be. So I'll push it up, and I know that normally when I have them lined up, that's about 17, 18 miles an hour. If I bring it a little bit past that, I may be bumping it up to 19, and I keep on until I've got it maxed out at 21 miles per hour. So I use this, I'll just twist it, I'll look down at it, and then I'll hit my down arrow, it'll engage, and I continue to pedal. And so even though I'm in cruise control, I'm pedaling. And it will act exactly the same as any other PAS mode, with one exception. When you quit pedaling, it'll maintain the speed. But other than that, it reacts similar to any PAS mode as long as you're pedaling. So that way I find that sweet spot over here where I want to be, 19 miles an hour, engage it, and then that's where I'll continue to ride at that speed. And if you notice, I use the gearing, you'll notice in my videos, I use the gearing a lot because I try to maintain my cadence of 80 RPM. So by doing that, when I go up a hill, you'll see me downshift. When I come down a hill and the speed starts building up a little bit more, I'll shift up to a higher gear. So that's the reasoning for that. I'm just trying, all this is, I use my gears as a regulator. I use it to regulate my cadence, and that's truly what gearing is for, to regulate your cadence. Now, you do understand that in certain conditions, cadence really doesn't come into play. If you're going up a hill, and it's a real steep hill, then of course you want to get it in the lowest gear you can, and your cadence is going to be what it's going to be. And the same thing going downhill. You just put it in sevenths and just fly down the hill and until you can't pedal anymore, and then you do whatever you need to do to keep going down that hill. You might even be hitting your brake a little bit to slow you down. So that's kind of telling you the philosophy around using your gearing. And I hear a lot of people say, well, I just put it in sevenths and forget about it. Well, that's okay, but you're really not giving your cardiovascular a very good workout by doing that, because if anything, you're creating more stress on your knee joints. I've had knee problems ever since my early 20s, and I used to like to jog, and I had to give it up because I couldn't. So that's when I took up cycling, and I found out with cycling, if done properly, it won't interfere with you. You won't have that knee problem that you have while you're running. And so that's why I took up cycling, was because of my knees. And I know from years and years and miles of riding that too higher gears can hurt your knees. It still puts a strain on that area of your body, and the older you get, the less strain you want on your joint. So my recommendation is that you don't have to do it overnight, but maybe try to condition yourself into getting your cadence up so you won't be in these real high gears, because normally when you're in those real high gears, you're letting the bike do all the work. You're not getting a cardiovascular workout, and so you're really not getting the health benefits you would get if you start learning to ride using that cadence, because that cadence will increase your heart rate. When you're in those real high gears, it really doesn't increase the heart rate that much. It more puts stress on your joints. So that's my philosophy. Some people say, well, I don't care. I just want to have fun and enjoy riding. Well, you can enjoy riding if you learn how to get your cadence up. It becomes second nature after a while. It's just a matter of training yourself to do that. It doesn't become that much of an effort once you get used to doing it. Okay, that's enough on that. Okay, let's go riding. The battery level is at 49 volts, which is a little less than 75%. I will start out in PAS mode 3. Notice my right hand is turning the throttle to create momentum. Up on the saddle and right foot to the pedal. I'm on my way. I'm in PAS 3. My speed is at 15.3 miles per hour. I'm in 5th gear. My normal cadence is around 80 RPM. Note, my right hand is twisting the throttle to line up with the first dot. My left thumb is depressing the down arrow of the controller to engage cruise. Note, the cruise speed is approximately 16.5 miles per hour, which is a little over 1 mile per hour in PAS 3. I will now drop out of cruise mode by lightly tapping the rear brake lever. My speed will drop back down to 15.3 miles per hour in PAS3. Now we'll twist the throttle and line up the first dot again, then to press the controller down button to engage cruise control. My speed is a little higher this time in cruise mode at about 16.7 miles per hour. Setting the cruise control speed is not an exact science. Wind, hills, and battery voltage level will affect the cruise control speed. The XP's cruise control is not governed the same as your car. It is governed by a set current level to the motor rather than the speed of the e-bike. Notice left-hand signal and shadow for left turn ahead. I will maintain cruise speed. Again, I'm accelerating in PAS3 and then engage cruise control. I'm starting downhill and will shift to 6th gear. As the road levels off and my speed drops, I will downshift to 5th gear. Throughout this ride, I will keep the bottom readout of the controller LCD screen in the current display to show the amperage reading at different levels of loading. There is a slight incline here and I will shift to 4th gear. Note the amperage rises as we go up this incline. Once the road levels off, I shift to 5th gear. I brake while making my turn, and this disengages the cruise control. While going up this incline, I will engage the cruise control. After over 3,000 miles, the front hydraulic brake has just developed a squeal. Either the pads need to be replaced or the brake needs adjustment or both. I am now leaving neighborhood streets onto a 45-mile-an-hour thoroughfare. I will be upping my PAS from 3 to 4 and upshifting to 6th gear. At this incline, I will be shifting down to 5th gear. Once the road levels off, I shift back to 6th gear. Coming up to this intersection, I bump it up to PAS 5 to make it through before the light changes. I check my mirror and there's no traffic behind me. I move over to the left lane to go straight through the intersection. Note, this camera has a 360 wide-angle lens and things appear farther away than they are. I shift to 7th gear. Once through the intersection, I drop down from PAS 5 to 4 and shift down from 7th gear to 6th gear. Now I engage the cruise control at full throttle and drop down to PAS 3. Note, PAS 4 and 5 while pedaling will override cruise control and full throttle. I am accelerating in PAS 3 and will twist the throttle to full and engage the cruise control. I shift from 5th to 6th gear. At an intersection, I position myself the same as I would in a car or motorcycle. I found over 70 years and tens of thousands of bike miles that this is the safest way to handle traffic at an intersection. Knock on wood, I've never had an accident at an intersection. Okay, not the most gracious. Take off. In busy traffic, I feel more comfortable at higher speeds to somewhat flow with the traffic. I will bump it up to PAS 5 in 7th gear
Up ahead, I will be going a slight downhill and will max out at 28 miles per hour.
Well guys, this is going to conclude today's video, and I hope that you got something out of it. I hope you have a little more understanding now about cruise control and how your controller controls the speed of your XP. So until next time, y'all have a nice day.